In lecture 2, Zach and I described the concept of keys and key signatures. You'll remember that when we travel through the octave using scales, we get distinctive internal patterns of intervals that arise, and you'll remember the major scale has that distinctive pattern of tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone.
And you remember us talking about key signatures and saying that they're a way for us to signal right at the very start of our piece of music what sharps and what flats we're going to have in any given key. Now this came from the idea that scales were built up and we needed to use some sharps and some flats when we were using a tonic that wasn't C. So this then allows us to use any one of our pitch classes, and that is any one of the 12 note names, as our tonic, so that we can build patterns of tones and semitones, or scales, or melodies, or chords in any of these given keys. Now, it'll help you when you're trying to become fluent in reading and writing music to try and get these memorized as much as possible. If you look back at week 2, there are some tips and some mnemonic devices for how to actually go about doing this.
Okay, so at the start of this lecture, we were looking at triads, and we were looking at the perceptual effect of those note groupings, so that just one of the notes that was there was the most sort of important one, was the one that we could use to identify that triad, had the overarching label for that triad. Well, within a key, the relationships between and within those triads and how we use them can also contribute to that overarching sense of tonality, by which we mean the quality of the key.
So we've been using words like harmony and harmonic structure, and these are words and phrases that you hear when we're talking about music often. What do we actually mean by these phrases? Now is probably a good time to actually think a wee bit more precisely about what we're saying.
Yeah, well, harmony describes the effects of those triads that we've been talking about, and the relationships and the patterns between the triads when we use them in a key. Key and harmonic structure, or key and harmony, are the two most important building blocks for music that sits in a tonal tradition. So to explain this more, I'm now going to sing you a familiar tune. You can follow the melody on the stave notation on the screen. Instead of using the words that you'll be familiar with, I'm just going to use the scale degree numbers when I'm singing. 1 1 5 5 6 6 5 4 4 3 3 2 2 1 5 5 4 4 3 3 2 5 5 4 4 3 3 2 1 1 5 5 6 6 5 4 4 3 3 2 2 1. You can hear a couple of things, a couple of features in that familiar song. The first one that we're going to point out is that you've got a very strong tonal identity. I was singing in C, and C is the tonic. It came across very clearly.
Another thing that we can think about relates to the structure of the music. So as the melody progresses, there's points that it comes to rest, but it doesn't feel completely finished. There are other points where the music comes to rest, but does feel finished and does feel closed. Now these points are what we know as cadences.
Let's look at a couple of those cadences from the familiar song. A cadence that comes to rest but sounds open and unfinished. We've got one up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. It rests, but it's not finished. And we can compare that with the return at the end. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. What's causing that effect then?
Well, in order to think about it, we really want to look at the scale degrees again. And before we do that, let's just think about the key of C as a whole. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and back to 1 again for our tonic.
We know that triads that are built on the tonic and on the dominant have particularly strong structural properties. Harmonically, they're very strong. So let's see which scale degrees feature in the dominant triad. We've got a 5, and we've got a 7, and we've got a 2. I mean that we've got the 5th and the 7th and the 2nd degrees of the scale present. For the tonic triad, we've got the 1st and the 3rd and the 5th degrees of the scale present.
So let's go back to our melody again and look at this in a bit more detail. Well, if we look at one of the points that the music came to rest but it didn't feel finished, we
had
get
5 5 4 4 3 3 2 5 5 4 4 3 3 2.
So the 5 and the 2 really stand out to us, and that's what gives us this feeling of it not feeling quite finished. They're 2 notes that belong to the dominant chord.
Especially when we compare that to the phrase that did sound finished. 4 4 3 3 2 2 1.
And when we're coming down there, we're coming back away from the tonic chord. Sorry, we're coming back from the dominant chord, back down towards the tonic chord. And this is another example of a cadence.
So in music theory, we call those cadences where we sit and hang around, but at the dominant, open, unfinished chord, we call that an imperfect cadence. And we contrast that with a perfect cadence. And that's where we've travelled back from a dominant chord, back to the tonic. And we've come home again. There's a lot more to say about cadences, and we'll go a bit further in this lecture later on, but you'll go further still in the final lecture.